I hear all the time, they're like, well, they're always just constantly pushing. And well, now's not the time to push for, constitutional carry across the United States. No, it is time. Push everything. Push every single possible case that you can afford to push.
Welcome to Gun Owners of America's State of the Second podcast. I'm Kailey.
And I'm John. And today we're joined by the man, the myth, the legend, the gun-toting Coloradoan who is just the meme lord of all meme lords, Shawn Herrin from We Like Shooting and Dangerous Freedom. How are you today, my friend?
I'm good, man. I'm actually not a meme lord. I just steal meme lords' memes and post them because it drives massive traffic on Instagram.
I feel like, no, I've seen a few memes from you. I
do make them. I do.
I've been in the back of a Jeep with you, putting boots on Biden's head.
That is true. But the best part of that ride was making a rap song about Kurt from scratch.
So we were on this long road trip from Arizona to Idaho, and Shawn came with us, and he made a whole rap song in the back of the Jeep about Kurt.
Yeah.
It was the greatest hit, and then he lost it, and he found it.
I found it. Yeah,
he found it. So,
but the best part is it was in GarageBand. Like I did all the music, I did the vocal performance, everything in a 11-hour Jeep ride.
Yes.
Wow.
It was great. It was terrible. When I say great, I mean terrible.
That is commitment. Well, I think you owe it to all of the listeners to drop a link to where people can listen to this wonderful.
Nobody wants to hear this.
Wonderful song.
The music aspect of it is wonderful. The topic is probably not friendly for most audiences. It's rated X. Maybe just a hard R, I think. Yeah, it's bad. So bad.
So, Shawn, we're best friends at this point. I think that's,
we basically are, and we have been for a long time.
Yes, for a very long time. Shawn and I spent hours on the phone together talking about stuff. We actually talked about you earlier today in a podcast. We were talking about magazine restrictions, and we're talking about how you and I bought the same exact gun. Yeah. And the gun shows up at your place with one magazine because I forgot about it, but no magazines in it.
Yeah, it was unfortunate. And the crazy thing is I have an FFL, so like I am legally allowed to have, standard capacity magazines, but it was kind of a bummer, but thankfully I had a bunch of the other ones. But yeah, the mag capacity stuff in Colorado, July 1st, 2013 is the day that they did that to us. And here we are still 11 years later.
God.
Colorado is super interesting because I think most people still conceptualize the West as this frontier and cowboy culture and very gun friendly, but Colorado has just become more and more progressively anti-gun, and I know a lot of that centers around the cities, but from your perspective as someone from the state, is it an apathy that you think drives this from like everyday gun owners, or just not standing up and saying, hey, enough's enough? Or is it the city's going more and more woke and anti-gun? Is it people moving to the state because it is a gorgeous state to live? Is it kind of a mixture of things? Like, what do you feel like is the pinpoint reason why such a traditionally pro-gun state has really swung the other direction in the last 10 years?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of all of the above, honestly. So I live in Colorado Springs, and if you look at a electoral map of Colorado, it's a big U of a red, and then a small strip of blue in the middle, which is Denver, Boulder, Fort Collins. And through really clever gerrymandering and just redistricting and changing all those things, they've really got a hold on Colorado. And I think that a lot of this stuff that happens is apathy, but at the same time, I think it's even more that we don't even realize that it happened. Like, even sometimes now I'm like, what happened to this awesome state? Because I live in Colorado Springs, a city of about 600,000, so not tiny by any means, but here it's the same Colorado I've always lived in. When I go to the mountains, it's the same Colorado I've always lived in. I never go to Denver, Boulder, and Fort Collins because they're all trash. So I don't see that part of it. And I think a lot of people feel just like me. They don't even realize that A, standard capacity magazines are illegal. And B, they don't realize what happened to our state until it's time for, taxes or any of that stuff. Or you go to Denver and get robbed, Denver is just trash. It is horrible. I don't even go there if I don't have to. But yeah, it's just a mixture of all the above. Plus Colorado is so great, and all the people that are leaving California and other states like that, they want to come here because it's so beautiful, but then they bring their horrible politics with them. So just a combination of all the above. And I think people are starting to finally wake up, but even now it's going to be tough to get it back.
Yeah. And I know that, everyone wants to look at things like lawsuits, and lawsuits can have tremendous capability when it comes to winning back and the restoration of rights. But the reality is, for most states, it is much easier to stop things before they start. Everyone kind of, holds their breath when it comes to, oh, well, you guys just make a slippery slope argument. People will confuse that all the time. And it's like, it's a slippery slope argument because it's a slippery slope. Some things are just reality, and people will generally accept a level of tyranny and then get adjusted to it. And they may get mad for a few minutes, and then, they'll move on because they don't have the luxury or the privilege of spending all day, all night, eat, sleep, and breathing the Second Amendment, which we get to do every day. They've got to go to work and get through school and raise kids and all of these aspects. And it's why you have to pay attention when we send things to your email. And you have to pay attention when it's election season. And you have to pay attention to these things because it's so much easier to stop it when it's a concept of an idea or when it's first introduced than it is going through the court systems, which can take years, and then you're still not guaranteed a victory.
Yeah, 100%. That's exactly it. Is, like I said, July 1st, 2013, and here we are in 2024. We've lost a case, went to the Colorado Supreme Court, lost there, which seems just outrageous. And now with Bruin kind of guiding where things are going to go now, hopefully we will have another case, but then even that one got derailed. So now we're kind of back to the drawing board there. And it's just a disaster. I know so many people in the gun world are like, well, okay, we lost. Now we're going to get them in the court. And here it's a decade, man. Like, it should never get to that point. Last year when they were trying to push an assault weapons ban through Colorado, I sat right here for 13 hours waiting to speak for 60 seconds. And the average person can't do that. Like, I get it. They have rigged and designed a system that is intended to stop people who have jobs and have lives and have families from participating in government. And it's terrible. And we need to figure out a way around that. And the way around that, unfortunately, is to vote for it. And the problem is we're so apathetic about voting these days that we just end up here over and over and over again. I know you guys fight the fight every single day, and it's rough. Like, once we lose and once we have to go to court, like, it's a big crawl back to the top.
Mm-hmm. And a costly one. The flip side of that is not only is it slow, but it's expensive. And almost, I don't want to say worse, because how do I want to phrase this? Precedent matters. And so you have to find the right case in the right district in the right scenario to set yourself up for as much success as humanly possible. Because if you allow the anti-gunners and you just throw a lawsuit anywhere, unless it's incredibly solid, you run the risk of not only losing the case, but then that sets the precedent that is the standard. And so when you go to fight it in another area, now the anti-gunners can go back to the previous case that you filed in the different area and say, but see, we won here, because, you have to be so careful on these things. It's not as easy. The Staples commercial. Like, it's not an easy button that we're just like, all right, click this and we got it fixed, guys. Like, don't worry. That's not how the legal system works. I mean, just think about bump stocks and how long that fight took. And thankfully, you know, we ended up securing the victory, and that those things are amazing. But that's a lot of time for a unserialized plastic piece, which, by the way, didn't make bump firing illegal. It just was the bump stock that was illegal.
Right. And even though we ultimately came out on top there, the tough part is how many people destroyed their bump stocks? How many millions, tens of millions of dollars were lost in our industry while that all went on? And okay, yeah, now we have this win later on, but like at that point, you know, the damage has been done. And it's, like I said earlier, it's so tough to crawl back from. You know, they're gone. You know, no one's really probably going to bring them to market again, maybe a little bit, but then they'll never hit the same way that they did that at once. And to be honest, they're stupid, but like I fight for everything, no matter how stupid, because I get it. Like I know that once they get rid of the stupid stuff, they come for the fun stuff.
Couldn't agree more. Now, we really dove into this podcast from the beginning. Shawn, why don't you introduce yourself to the people so they know who you are, other than me introducing you? So go ahead and tell a little bit about your background and what you do.
I don't know, man. I do a podcast for a job, which feels like a very teenager thing to say. It's almost like working at Chuck E. Cheese, you know, like I wear the mouse suit, and that's kind of what it is. I started a podcast with a bunch of buddies 11 years ago. And at that time I was a software engineer and, you know, kicking butt and taking names and sitting in meetings and doing PowerPoints and writing code. And then the podcast started to kind of like take off on accident. It wasn't a thing that I planned for or wanted to do. The podcast is called We Like Shooting, and it just kind of took off. And eventually I had to make a choice. And so I decided to do the thing that let me shoot machine guns and touch giraffes and drive tanks instead of sitting behind a desk in a cubicle. And I think I made the right choice. It's been a lot of fun. Over the years, I've done a ton of other stuff, but you know, like basically I do a podcast for a job. Yes, I know. I get it. That's me.
And this is my favorite. We always talk about the on-ramp to the Second Amendment, and this is one of my favorite stories. How did you and your co-host meet? And such an eclectic group of people who also met together to join and do this podcast.
It is a weird thing. So me and my buddy Aaron, we originally I was getting into guns and he was like, I'll get into guns too. And so we started a website where we could post pictures of our guns because I was a web developer. So that was very easy. So we started posting pictures of our guns, and then we were like, well, maybe we'll like start an online magazine. And then after about a couple weeks of that, we were like, oh man, this is so much work. We need to find some other people to help us out. So we went to Reddit. And we literally just went and looked for people that were big mouths and had really strong opinions and were real jerks about telling you their opinions. And we sent out queries to Jeremy. He had posted a picture of an armory that he welded himself. And so we said, hey, you want to write for our magazine? And then Savage was our news correspondent. Nick is like our master rifle builder out of Montana. But he's just a kid who was just really talented. And all of them argued with us basically. So we invited them and we started doing the podcast by accident, but we just found all these real weirdos on Reddit back when it was not the cesspool that it is today.
I mean, Jeremy weirdo, that's like an understatement, I think. And angry.
Yeah, 100%. all of us, like what a weird eclectic group that, you know, 11, maybe 12 years ago, because we didn't start the podcast right away, just suddenly like found each other. And here we are this long later, still like buddies, friends, brothers, and doing the podcast every week. It's pretty crazy.
So after you guys did the podcast, you guys have been doing the podcast for a while. A couple years ago, you bought, well, it's been longer than a couple years. You bought the Firearms. 7 years. You bought the Firearms Radio Network from Jake, who's the owner of Patriot Patch Co., who makes awesome patches, by the way. But you bought the network. What made you buy the network, and what did that process look like?
Man, I didn't want to buy the network. A lot of everything I'll say today is by accident, and it's true. So we had gotten on the Firearms Radio Network at the beginning. After a couple years, we became the #1 downloaded show on the Firearms Radio Network. And after about 5 years, Jake had just kind of had enough and didn't really want to run the network anymore. So he offered it to me. I said no. And then I started thinking about it after I talked to him and was like, what if somebody tries to boss me around? Like, I can't have that. So I hit him back and took over the network. And really over the last few years, I've spent a ton of time just trying to build it up and make it awesome. Make it easy to post, add technological advancements that nobody else really has, no other networks have, especially in the firearm space. And I've really put thousands of hours into making it cool. And again, just kind of by accident, just because I didn't want to be bossed around is why this whole thing exists.
And if you didn't know, you can listen to Stay the Second podcast on Firearms Radio Network.
Exactly. Firearmsradio.net.
So, obviously, owning the Firearms Radio Network, you are not only a big 2A advocate, but you're also a big free speech advocate. How has that been kind of transitioning from you posting a podcast to platform and creating a space for others to be able to share their thoughts and opinions and, the shows that you've chosen to curate on the network?
Yeah, I'll be honest. It was, for me, it was never really necessarily about, we as freedom people are probably one of the most held down, held back, and perpetrated against groups in recent memory. Like, I'm not trying to demean what others have gone through in our history, but over the last decade, it's gotten pretty bad for us. And so I never wanted to have like this big Firearms Radio Network to feel cool about anything. I always wanted just to have it so me and the homies would have a place where we could talk about stuff and not have to worry about getting shut down all the time. And it turns into this, those personal selfish desires kind of turn into this big platform where a lot of people can speak their mind, say their piece, and not have to worry about big tech shutting us down. And like, I have contingency plans because obviously we do use portions, but the best thing about podcasts is it's really hard to shut them down. It's, just a fundamental technology that the internet's built off of with RSS feeds. So it's tough to shut it down. And it was kind of, I listened to podcasts when I first started this, but they were all tech podcasts. And it just really has become this thing that is really hard to squelch, really hard to silence. And it has been awesome to kind of realize throughout the time that I've been doing it, how important it is for all of our voices to be heard.
Well, you talk about big tech shutting you down. I can count at least on all my fingers and toes the times you've been kicked off YouTube for doing something that they didn't like on a live stream, and you've now completely switched to Rumble for the most part. So what's that been like?
Yeah, we've been kind of old school because we've been around so long. We've been kicked, stabbed, prodded, and beat down by just about every major tech platform there is. I have had my Amazon storage shut down at one point, just no explanation. I've had our Facebook page, 200,000 people just deleted overnight. We've lost 5 or 6 YouTube channels. And now, lately, YouTube has a rule. I violate that rule at every opportunity because it's a dumb rule. It's about live streaming. You're not allowed to touch a gun during a live stream, which they do it because they don't want mass killers to live stream stuff, and they want the ability in their community standards to shut that down quickly. But for me, just trying to show off a gun, they're also like, oh, no, that's a violation of the standards. And so they kick us off and delete our video, and it just doesn't matter. I don't care. Rumble has really started to become a thing that I think is going to be pretty cool overall. After the last time we got kicked off YouTube, I talked to the guys over at Rumble, and I was like, you know what? Yeah, I'll invest. I'll put time, effort, and energy into building our Rumble presence. And, now we're getting tons of traffic over there. So it's been really good. I think it still has a ton of room to grow. And I think people are just sick of being suppressed. And not just us, like weed people, cigarette people, alcohol people, like everyone's getting shut down on these platforms because advertisers don't like it. And I'm just kind of sick of it. So Rumble is kind of a no holds barred free for all. And I'm here for it.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm an avid watcher and listener of the We Like Shooting podcast. First time caller. But yeah, I've seen. I was always watching it on YouTube, and you guys were averaging like 90 to 100 people on a live stream on YouTube, and then I hop in the Rumble the one night, and there's like 1,000 people watching you on Rumble, and just that number growth was insane. And I know people were commenting, like other people who have been watching for a while were like, "Wow, there's a lot more people in here than normal."
Yeah, for sure. Our audio downloads through the podcast are 99.9% of our traffic, and the video wasn't a ton. But now that we've converted to Rumble, we went from hundreds of views on YouTube to 60, 70, 80, 90, 100,000 on Rumble, and it's been super cool to open up to this new audience and to have a bunch of people. And I can see it in our download stats that video growth is driving our audio download stats, which is the number that I truly care about.
So we're talking about podcasts. A lot of people have talked about video in the gun industry. It's always been like review videos and this advertising and that advertisement. But your main focus is on the podcasting side. Why is podcasting so important to this industry and seeing that growth? And what is it, what benefits does it have to advertisers?
Yeah, that's something that I spend a lot of time thinking about. We never pioneered anything in podcast advertising. I stole it from tech podcasts from a decade ago. But I think, and studies seem to bear out the fact that because of the mechanism by which we deliver our content, meaning someone has headphones on, earbuds in, and they're at the gym, they're driving in their car, they're sitting there with us alone, whispering our sweet nothings into their ear, speaking of freedom and firearms. And just because of the intimacy of that, I think that people remember it even more. And we don't necessarily do ad reads as much as we just talk about our experiences with the products that we choose to represent. So it's like a natural extension of the conversation just in general. And because people are generally focused or alone listening to our voices, they feel a part of it. And because we have a lot of fun, they have a lot of fun. And because we do our ads the way that we do, I think it just generally provides a ton of value, in my opinion. And it seems to bear out. Like we get really good reports back from all of our advertisers on how the podcasting advertising works.
Well, and I think you're absolutely right. I mean, being able to grab somebody's attention and focus for more than 5 minutes has always been a pain. And we see this a lot with YouTube average numbers and things like that. But being able to capture them in the car or at the gym while they're focused and they're listening to it is always a good thing. Now, you've been doing this for 11 years, and there's been a lot of memorable moments that us as the fans have shared with you. Can you give me a top 5 memorable moments from We Like Shooting from over the years?
Let's see. Top 5 happened pretty early on. Back in the day, we kind of randomly just had random people join, and we had this dude who hated We Like Shooting join us. And just, having him speak. And it turned into exactly what you think it would. He just wanted attention. And so we gave him the attention. But we had a lady named Lil who was a fantastic long-range rifle shooter. And he started disrespecting her. And so I shut him down and kicked him off and said, nope, you're not going to talk to her like that on my watch. And so I'm going chronologically, not necessarily order of impact. But I think that was a moment where I was like, okay, yeah, we can choose what's going to be said here. And we have the ultimate power to just kick people off if we don't like what they're saying. So not only was that a good moment for me, it also made me realize that with that power, we can never abuse it and we have to let people talk. Which brings us to our next, which do you guys remember Voda?
Yes, I was going to bring up Voda.
Yeah, that was an interesting one. He was a firearms trainer that maybe shouldn't have been a firearms trainer, in my opinion. And he did a lot of things on the internet that raised a lot of eyebrows. And so he came on our podcast and we were talking to him and we're trying to give him an open opportunity to speak his mind and talk about where he was coming from. at one point, we had just kind of had enough of his nonsense, and my co-host Nick, he turned to me and he's like, "Okay, I've had enough. Can I do it?" And I was like, "Yep." So he just dropped the hammer and called him out for all of his nonsense, and it was, in my opinion, really well done. It was respectful, but it really slapped down the nonsense, and I thought it was a great moment. We had Ed's Manifesto on the show, and he told a story of his friend Yaramilo and a donkey show in Mexico. And it was just like a really impactful moment on the show. I still hear about it to this day. It was years ago. Just hilarious. We were all just dying, laughing, crying, couldn't talk. It was pretty great. You're definitely looking for episode 171 in this line of questioning. So I was going through a rough time in my life. And, one of the things that we do is drink alcohol on the show and, just have fun hanging with our buddies. Well, I drank too much alcohol, way too much. I don't actually remember episode 171, but I hear that it was just an absolute cluster. So I hear about that one a lot. I've never listened, but it was terrible.
It was
and,
fantastic.
not my finest moment, I'll admit. And John, I go for the fifth one. I go, what do you think? What did I miss?
Oh, I mean, the one with Maria was pretty good. That was funny.
Dremel. Yeah. I remember which one.
And then, no.
Some of them I just can't talk about. I'm like, I can't say that on your podcast.
Yeah. The 171 was probably the best because you gave out your
there
number.
was one where we did it live in Vegas and I fell down the stairs coming back from the bathroom. That was one. Anyway,
yeah.
Our podcast is a little bit more Howard Stern than Fox News. And as you can tell from that greatest hits, it's slightly embarrassing because I'm a grown man. I shouldn't be acting like this, but I do.
But the best part about being friends with you in the podcast, and this kind of goes into the community that you've built and that we've built as GOA and as you and I have known each other for such a long time.
Yeah.
The amount of stories of us hanging out, the monster can in Washington, the stealing of cones, the Jeremy and Daniel defense, the list goes on, and that's what this whole. And again, if it wasn't for the 2A and us being in this 2A, we built this culture and friendship of, because of guns, because of this, we have this community that we all get to hang out in and have fun, and then the words are not coming around to my mouth.
Camaraderie.
Thank you. Camaraderie. There it goes. And friendship that we have, that I don't think that would have been possible without the 2A.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Yeah, I would still be a software developer. Just, hanging out, chilling in my cube.
Yeah.
And, 2A has enriched my life in ways that I can never even articulate, honestly. It's just been such a wonderful thing, and the people that I've met are some of the people that I'm closest to in my entire life. So it's special, and it's a great, special community full of people that I would trust my life to.
That's awesome. Now, we just crossed over the halfway mark on this podcast, and that means that it is time for our From the Soapbox segment, where we tackle one of the more controversial issues happening within the Second Amendment community and get your hot takes and all of the spice and all that comes with being on your soapbox. So the topic that we're tackling this week is gun owners and hunters' apathy. At the time that we're filming this, it is before the election. I'm not quite sure when this episode is going to be released, but kind of take us through your hot takes.
Yeah, I've actually been going off on tangents lately on this. It's a really concerning thing. And I think that a lot of people feel disenfranchised, disenchanted with the system. I think that they feel like their vote doesn't matter. And in some cases, they're right. And they just, people are like, oh, I got to go to work. I can't take the time to do that. And there's got to be some tough love. Like, people like that are the first people to complain online when something happens that they don't like. I didn't fight hard enough for the mag ban here in Colorado in 2013. If it was different, if it was today, I would fight tooth and nail to the end. But here we are because of, my lack of, because of my lack of passion about the topic, I could have inspired maybe some other people. So on my show recently, I've been talking very much about, if you don't vote, then you should probably just shut up. If you don't vote, I'm embarrassed of you. Like, there is going to be a president selected. You don't have to like either one of them, but one of them is going to be selected. You might as well pick one that probably identifies a little better with some of your values than the other. I'm not saying who to vote for. I'm just saying, if you don't vote, you're an embarrassment. If you don't vote, you don't get to talk later. If you don't vote, and if some of your friends don't vote, like, maybe think about who you're friends with, because they are absolutely the ones who will sit down, sign a petition, talk crap on the internet. And it's just, I've had enough of it. I've gotten a ton of messages from people lately that are like, oh, well, I was one of those guys. And, listening to you lambaste me has kind of changed my theory. And they're sending me their ballots now, showing me that they voted. And I think that's awesome. I think that bullying is kind of a thing that we might need to bring back a little bit, especially for people who choose not to vote. Because they're going to be loud later, but don't let them. If you know somebody who doesn't vote, try to get them to vote. I think it's really super important. And if they don't, just bully them until they do.
Well, I think the apathy within gun ownership, when it comes to advocacy, when it comes to voting, is, for a lot of people who live in conservative states, this false security of, they're not going to come after me. They're not going to come after, you hear this argument, I think primarily, unfortunately, in the hunting space, that doesn't apply to me. That's for the people who are purchasing body armor and want to have, XYZ. But we've seen more and more egregious steps by the federal government, from the Department of the Interior wanting to do a lead ammo ban, or the changing of funding to completely remove hunter education classes from the school, completely demolishing the on-ramp for many people to get involved with the Second Amendment and have any kind of baseline safety training and capacity to understand, hey, this is my constitutionally protected right. This is my first introduction to this. And the flip side of allowing these attacks, and thankfully so far we've been successful in thwarting these attacks, but they're just getting more aggressive. And so if you're sitting back and you think, oh, well, it's not going to happen to my little section of the gun owners universe that I live in, or I'm safe, maybe you are, but what about your children or your grandchildren? What about the next generation of gun owners? What about the people who aren't fortunate enough to live in a red state with good gun laws that just passed constitutional carry? Your vote has an impact outside of just the president or the vice president, especially if you live in a state with a Senate race that is, closing in on the gap. It's not just about you. It's about making sure that we have a Senate that is going to secure the filibuster so that we have another way to kill things. It's securing the Senate so that we get good pro-gun, constitutionalist, conservative judges that are going to be instrumental in fighting things like the quote-unquote high-capacity magazine bans in Colorado or California. And so you might be looking at these things going, well, it doesn't really impact me, or maybe I can't sit on the fence. But it's way more than just the presidency that is, on the line for gun owners. The Second Amendment is on the ballot, and That's not a campaign slogan. That is a public service announcement. There are so many things, especially this time with the Senate up for grabs, that are mandatory for us as gun owners to win. It's incumbent upon us as individuals.
Yeah, the saying, I won't do it justice, but when they came for the bump stocks, it didn't affect me, so I didn't participate. And then when they came for the AR-15s, well, I just hunt and I don't participate. Well, here now in Colorado, we have a proposition on the ballot that out-of-state woke conservationists want to take away our ability to hunt mountain lions here in Colorado, which is a thing that we do to keep the ecosystem healthy. And, that it hurts their feelings. So they are trying to outlaw it. And a lot of them are not even from here in state. So, now because the hunters didn't stick up for those other things, now the hunters are under the gun. And I think we all just need to understand that if it shoots a projectile, we need to fight for it. If there's any kind of freedom whatsoever, we need to fight for it. It's huge and it's important. And if we don't figure out how to make time, then we should just shut up, because, later is too late. Now is the time. Take action. And if not, just you're an embarrassment, I got to say.
I mean, that's well said. I mean, you and I have talked in depth, and you've brought it up in the past about living in our echo chamber. And it seems like now it's really important for us to get out of our echo chamber and look at it and go, okay, this is what this is election, not just this election, but every election means. And not only are we looking at it from a one vote thing, but we also have to look at it like this is our constitutional given rights that could be taken away. And you put it best, the bump stop got taken away. What's next? And we always give this inch and push this goal line further and further. And we've talked about this in the past where we push it. We let them, okay, yeah, we'll give them this, or yeah, we'll give them this. And then it takes us years to fight back to where we just started from. Now, and I know, I've said it before and I'm going to say it again. The Dems are really good at one thing, and that's pushing, and being the loudest person in the room. And conservatives, we are very quiet, and we just want to be left alone, and we want to have our freedoms. Now is the time for us to go, nah, that's enough.
Yeah. I hear all the time, they're like, well, they're always just constantly pushing. And now's not the time to push for, constitutional carry across the United States. No, it is time. Push everything. Push every single possible case that you can afford to push, because that's what they're doing. And eventually, I always live by the motto that if you say something enough, it becomes true. And that's exactly what they are doing and what they have done. And we need to fight back just as much and fight for every inch and introduce every nonsense thing that we could think of, just to constantly keep it all tied up and keep it in the public zeitgeist and make sure people are talking about it.
Yeah. And that's, kind of speaking back to our core philosophy at GOA of being no compromise. It sounds like we're being rude. We're not. It's understanding that your right does not come from the government. It is constitutionally protected. And therefore, they can't take it away. And when you understand that, and you understand the 27 words that were penned by our founders protecting that right, and knowing that they didn't mince it, and when you take all of that into consideration and you understand that we have the high ground, we have the resolution to defend our protected right. And so you can't just roll over and capitulate and give them this or give them that. You have to be fighting vigilantly and at every level. I think that we've seen that victory can come from this, because if you go back to the Second Amendment sanctuary ordinances, which were those county, state, local municipalities, and you see where we started with those when Virginia wanted to pass and that massive gun control and all of those. What was that SHOT Show? It was happening simultaneously. It's the VCDL, and GOA has been a part of it for many years. The lobby day in Virginia, and it was 2021. And so right after that, you had the Second Amendment sanctuary ordinances, and they went all across the country. You can still go on our website, download a template if your county doesn't have one. Go ahead and get it passed. It's actually very easy to do. And all of the instructions are there. I promise you're going to be great. And but you go and you get it passed, and then we saw that turn into constitutional carry and Second Amendment preservation acts all across the country. And now you have the momentum working in gun owners' favor to where we have over 50% of the country is now in a constitutional carry state, some form of permitless carry. And we're going to continue to fight for more of those. But again, it all started because we stopped that baseline apathy, and we got involved as the grassroots. And then it's been more and more and more people jumping on board. And that's what it's going to take to achieve victory, especially long-term victory.
Also, you just said we have the high ground in front of a bunch of Star Wars nerds. So that's all I can think about for the last I listen to all that.
Fair.
We are Obi-Wan. We have the high ground.
Exactly. Exactly. But yeah, I totally agree. I didn't even know that you guys had that template for the sanctuary state. That is super cool. And you know what? All the people who hate all the things that we stand for, they're out there sitting around all day thinking of ways that they can, infringe upon our rights. I think that, if you have some spare time, think of ways to strengthen our rights. They choose to destroy. We just want to build.
Well said. Well, we are at the 45-minute mark, so we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. Shawn, go ahead and plug away socials. Where do people find you? All the above.
Oh, man. You can just search for We Like Shooting anywhere, and it'll come up. Subscribe to the podcast. Listen to it. It's fun. But you can find all the best gun podcasts, outdoors podcasts at firearmsradio.net. And that's pretty much it. Just, We Like Shooting anywhere. You'll find it.
All right.
Out there.
I'm going to let you do the outro. You do your outro because it's one of the best outros. I don't think Kailey's heard it. So go ahead and do your outro for We Like Shooting.
I mean, just genuinely, I say it all the time because I want it to stick in people's head. It's nothing that I wrote. It's just something that I co-opted and stole, like the memes. And that's that we should always choose dangerous freedom over peaceful slavery.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. And like Shawn said, have a great rest of your day.